amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. My name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with Jackie K and Evan Liu. I believe that Ezra will be joining us as well as we bid adieu to another Colorado Avalanche season, unfortunately, as we meet here today on a Tuesday, just the week after the Avalanche have been eliminated by, ouch, the Dallas Stars from the Stanley Cup playoffs, and ouch, Matt Duchene with an overtime winner to boot. But as you know, us Avs fans, we don't ever stop. So now it's, I guess, just time to look ahead at next season. But while I have your attention, please head on over to milehighhockey.com. Give us a follow on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Mile High Hockey and at MHH_lab. You can see that written down on the bottom on the ticker there. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and share this content as we will keep it rolling well into next season and beyond. Nothing's stopping us. So, Jackie, Evan, let's talk a little bit about it. Spoiler alert, Ada was wrong about his bold prediction. We're here today, and it's not a playoff edition, unfortunately. So let's just get right into it. I do want to talk a little bit about the positive, though, as, you know, Game 5 happened, too, since we last met as well. So, Jackie, I'm actually going to send this one to you first because I felt like going into the playoffs, you might have had a unique perspective, I guess, compared to most fans, where you weren't sold necessarily on Colorado's competitive advantage, as you put it, on the back end. And I want to, ask you, here's Ezra coming in. Ezra, welcome to the program, my friend. But Jackie, I wanted to ask you if that was made more apparent against Dallas, and if, to you, was Dallas just the better team in this series?
I'd probably say yes to both. I put in my predictions before the playoffs started that the Avs would lose to Dallas in the second round. So
You did?
that's kind of what I expected. And some of the defensive numbers that have come out have shown that the Avs are not as strong defensively. So, yeah, I kind of think what I thought would happen happened.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it went down that way because obviously we mentioned it in our last edition, the Avs didn't have an excuse with the Valeri Nichushkin endeavor, but it definitely played a factor as we saw, the Avs really, really down in the dumps in Game 4 when the news hit. And then Game 5, as I mentioned, kind of in the buildup, that was a positive moment for this Colorado Avalanche team and one that I thought that they could build off of once it kind of was all said and done. But Mr. Managing Editor Evan, to double down on what I just asked, Jackie, Are you of the opinion that Dallas is more well constructed, like top to bottom roster wise?
I believe so, and I think that was going to be the difference in this series. I think specifically when you look at the forward depth that they have, like, I mean, Wyatt Johnston's Wyatt Johnston, right? Like,
Right.
there was nothing that really the Avs could have done to go up against him, aside from Nathan McKinnon just being the animal that he is. And when you're relying on guys like Yakov Trenin or Cogliano or Miles Wood, Ross Colton, kind of anyone along those sort of lines, it's not, they didn't have the same sort of oomph, I guess, as the rest of the players on the Stars did. It's very, I kind of was having flashbacks to first round last year against Seattle, where it's basically that, but a little bit better. And I think that's what happened in this series. And ultimately it showed for the Avs in their defeats. Ultimately, after they lost Game 4, I just wanted at least one more chance in Game 5, and they did it. And then one more chance in Game 6, because you're going home, and then who knows after that, and then it's Game 7, who really knows after that. So they really did the best that they could. You can't really fault them for their efforts in Game 6. They were there. Jake Oettinger was astonishing in net, and the Avs were never really able to adjust to Dallas's changes that they made in the third period at all in that game, which evened it up, and then eventually won it in the end.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker. I think in the second overtime, we were all on pins and needles, kind of felt the writing on the wall as the game transitioned from that third period and those adjustments that you mentioned, which pretty much were highlighted extensively by the ESPN broadcast crew. They basically, right from the start of the third period, I felt like Eddie Olchuk was really tapped into the adjustments that were hopefully going to be made. I don't want to insinuate anything, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He seemed vested in those adjustments being made, almost like he was trying to will them about with his words in the broadcast. And then they did come about in the third period, and the Avs just did not respond. And you kind of saw that play itself out multiple times in the series if you really take a look back on it. I've taken these few days away from the social realm to kind of do a deep dive on what I saw in this series. And Evan, you mentioned, leaning on guys like Trenin is the way you put it. And I think that there's a lot to be taken away from how you phrase that, because a guy like Yakov Trenin and the Zach Parises, those guys were not brought in to be leaned on. Those guys were brought in to be, a little seasoning on the meat and potatoes that were already there. And when you have something like the Nichushkin situation happen, and you mentioned it was felt a lot like last year. Well, in similar fashion to last year, the thing that the Avalanche designed their power play around, which is a net front presence, is what they are missing twofold. They're missing that in Gabe Landeskog, and they're missing that in Val Nichushkin. And so they're trying to synthesize it. And that's my major takeaway. And Ezra, you keyed on it in our roundtable, which isn't out yet. So folks, keep an eye on our milehighhockey.com for that roundtable. It's the four of us reacting kind of to the Avs as well. But you mentioned something needs to change on the power play. I totally agree with you. What does that mean? I know we talked a little bit last week about McCarr being more of a scorer. What do you think?
Well, I think I have two thoughts on it, because I did mention it, and I agree with myself, and I agree with you that it's something where there's potential to change. But also, we have to remember this is a top 10 power play for years on end. So what they're doing works. I just think they don't have a second option when what they're doing isn't working. And that's why they get so streaky. So I feel like they just need to have right now what Dallas, I'm using Dallas as the example, because what Dallas was doing from games 2 through game 6 too, but game 6 they managed to score some goals, was to get out on them quickly and not give them enough space to make the passes that free up lanes that the power play is designed to create. And they don't have anything to go to as a secondary option to take that speed away from the penalty kill. And I've been watching I watched a bunch of the Vancouver Edmonton series, and Edmonton doesn't let players penalty kills do that to them, because they move McDavid around constantly. So they can't really go all the way out to the points, or they can't really expand the box of the penalty kill, because they have to keep collapsing on McDavid. And I just think adding an element of like that with the players that Colorado has should not be difficult.
Agreed.
But they get stubborn. The players get stubborn, like Bednar says, and the coaching staff gets stubborn too. And they have this thing that works to an incredible rate. I mean, again, top 10 in the league year in, year out, was one of the top power plays in terms of efficiency in the playoffs this year, even though we had, dry spells that were frustrating to us as fans and as analysts, I guess. It's just one of those things where when what works for them isn't working, they don't have another option. They stick to what's not working. And it just would, I think, benefit them a ton to have a second look or even a third look to go to.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I have to, though, rebuke what you said with give you a rebuttal, I guess is the better way to put that, with I wonder what the stats – actually, I know what the stats look like with Val on that power play compared to what they look without him on that power play.
But they managed to score twice in Game 6 without Val. So there is –
for sure.
They can work around his absence. And
he's not even on the top unit all the time.
Right.
No, but But my point being, it does feel like the power play is heavily predicated on either him or Lehkonen fulfilling that bumper net front role.
But isn't that kind of a problem because you have your three elite players and you're saying the power play isn't set up?
That's exactly what I wrote in the roundtable, which is it feels like this team is constructed in antithesis of their approach. And I don't think I think that's the adjustment I take from, which is so, and now that I look back at me a year ago, I sound like an idiot because last year I'm like, you guys got to get more physical and you got to do this and you got to do that. And they did those things. And now I'm finding a new hole. But I do feel like maybe last year this was the issue too, because you didn't have Gabe and you didn't have Val. And
they went 1 for 17 in the Seattle series on the power play.
So it's fair to say that might have been an issue there too, right? And I don't think, like you said, it's a personnel issue. I think it's how the approach fits the personnel. And I think that's a pretty easy adjustment to make. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think specifically Nathan MacKinnon wants to be a shooter on the power play. And he, to an extent, gets to do what he wants. The coaching staff has said that the players kind of run the power play. So, they are looking for McKinnon's shot, and it's just not the most dangerous of the three primary guys, in my opinion. We've talked about it at length on this podcast for the entirety of the podcast, I feel like. But Rantanen is the shooter, McKinnon is the creator, and Makar is the distributor. And if you just use them to their strengths, I think you'd have a stronger power play. But they seem very insistent on getting McKinnon this shot because he wants it. And obviously, he scored a lot of goals. I think he had 10 power play goals, which is not a ton, but it's still like he's creating goals by taking that shot.
Yeah.
So there's merit to it. They are a very good power play, but it's just they're not playing to their strengths. It's weird.
I think the thing is that teams have figured out how to adjust to that, right? Like the Dallas Stars, they did a really good job with that of putting pressure on these players, making them play quick, and forcing errors and mistakes and turnovers. And I mean, the Avs even gave up a few shorthanded goals in the series, right? Like that's not going to help you at all when you're trying to win a series. So I think really what it is just trying to adjust and to adapt. And the word's already been said several times, stubborn, right? The Avs are stubborn. They want to go about things their way and like play their way. Completely understandable what a team wants to do is play that way. But on top of that, you also need to react to what is going on if something is not working out your way.
Yeah.
The definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'm not saying that Jared Bednar is insane or anything like that, but I just think that there needs to be at least something in the back pocket. Like something that needs to be organized.
Don't you think? Like
I would agree with you.
Like
Jackie.
A lot of the same problems, and I feel like they have a great system and they had great ideas, and it's not that they need to just throw that out the window, but I feel like it's becoming less and less effective because they're getting figured out a little bit, and I think it's also just getting stale. Like it's just. There's nothing new and fresh about what they're doing anymore.
Well, and to Ezra's credit, like it's because they're still trying to set up that McKinnon shot from the Ovi dot over and over again. That's what they're going for. And I get it. Like Ezra, You're totally right. That's the goal. That's the way he scored the game tying goal in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. It works. But you're right. It's about having options, especially when a team proves they can take away your best option. You can't just hope Miko just starts picking corners because they took away Nathan McKinnon. And that's exactly what happened. That's what we were doing. We were going around about with that puck and just waiting for somebody to make a shot, which isn't really taking advantage of your man, having a man on somebody else. So I'm with y'all. I do think though that the big guns came out in Game 5, which was a positive because I think it looks different than optically than if they lost in 5 that they lost in 6. I'm still disappointed because they lost all 3 games at home, which is its own conversation. But I'm less disappointed than I would have been had they lost 4 straight in general. So I think that was good. And to see the Stars kind of be the ones that came to the forefront and to see Casey Middlestat come to the forefront in that moment, I think is a positive. But I want to kind of open this up to the floor to who's got their answer ready for this one. But we talked a lot before the playoffs started about what it would mean to be success this year, how far the Avs would have to get. And we kind of all agreed that it was the conference final. That obviously hasn't happened. Do you still feel that way? And if that's the case, is this a failure to you this season?
Well, I'll just throw my contrary perspective out there. I didn't really expect them to get further. So for me, my kind of feelings on this season and on this team's a little bit different. I think there was like a lot of excitement out there, and I just never felt like this was the team. And I always said, I'm not counting out elite players doing something special, but that's what it would have taken. I think it would have taken a total heroic run from those 3 to really bring us there. So for me, I've just kind of been ready for this team to be done. I just didn't connect with it. I didn't think they had it. So my disappointment's in a different way. It's always disappointing when the season ends. It's always disappointing there's no more hockey. But am I disappointed this team didn't get further? Not really. I think that's kind of what they were built to be, a second round team, is what I think.
Well, I think you're right today. I don't think you were right before Game 4, which I know one guy.
Yes,
it just changed everything.
They were already losing the series. They had already lost Game 2 and 3.
Absolutely. But here's the thing: the way it changed.
Sorry,
the way it. No, you're okay. I think you're gonna say. I'm gonna say what you're thinking.
Yeah, go off.
Is what changed for that wasn't just the one player. It changed Zach Parise's role for the rest of the series. It changed Jonathan Drouin's role for the rest of the series. It changed Mikko Rantanen's role for the rest of the series. It took the leading scorer in the NHL playoffs off the ice entirely. So I know
you're always going to be missing someone. If the argument is this team can win a cup if absolutely every single person, including Landeskog, was on the team, that's not realistic. Everyone's missing someone.
Agreed.
I mean,
my approach though is you can't be in this position again next season, because as unlikely as it was and it felt, it obviously wasn't unlikely, because here we are today, and the Avalanche have the same exact issue they had last season. On the power play, they can't score and can't win. They can't score first. They're not off on the front foot. All of these things are almost carbon copy of the way we talked about them after the series against the Kraken. And so my point is, you're totally right. You can't rely on one guy. So stop building your team to rely so heavily on this stylistic role. There has to be a change, or you have to be sure that these guys are going to be on your roster. So that's kind of where I'm at. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And that's where I'm with you, Jackie. I'm, in hindsight now, less disappointed than I was, say, right after Game 3 when we're down 2-1. I was pretty optimistic in that moment, looking ahead at the series, thinking we had the dogs to fight. Now, looking back, knowing what I know, I'm like, no, that wasn't the case when you pull someone who I considered and called the X factor for the Avalanche for months that stayed true. He was just not on the ice. So that's where I'm at. I don't think failure is a bad thing because I think you learn most from failure. And I would consider this season a failure, but not as gross as I thought it would be. If Nichushkin was on the ice and they lost this way, it would be a worse failure to me. But
I mean, they were already losing. I don't know.
They were down 2-1. That's true. But after game 1, we were like, sweep? We were like, this team rocked. And
That's so bad looking back on that now. Golly.
But I mean, at the time, we're like, Val's on fire. Jonathan Drouin's coming back in 2 games.
That's
it was compounding things.
Yes, exactly. And Val going down wasn't just like, oh shoot, Val's out of the lineup. It's we finally have Drouin back. We're gonna be our full selves. We're gonna be our best selves. And then we're really not. We're really not gonna be our best selves. And
but nobody is in the playoffs right now. As
no, I know, but like if you look at game 3, the way that Colorado played that game, they did lose that game, but they dominated even strength. They were great in game 3. They just couldn't find a goal. And then they're thinking, Jonathan Drouin's coming back. We're going to create some more goals. We have an opportunity to bring ourselves, keep playing that way and win game 4, tie the series up, go back to Dallas and do whatever we do. But instead of that, obviously Val went out. The team was deflated. They sucked in the first period. They were so bad. It was brutal. And we all knew, like, okay, yeah, no, they are done. They are toast. That's when we all knew they were toast. It was nice that they won another game, but like prior to that game, I know, Jackie, you definitely have been saying that you were pessimistic the whole time, but also you agreed with me on the sweep. So, we were all pretty high.
Did I really believe it? No, I just said I was going to do it. I was
okay. It's okay. We were having fun.
That's fair.
If
I know it sounds like I'm saying, oh, they lost. Okay, I was right. But like I said, I literally said that they would lose in the second round against Dallas. Like,
yeah, no, you were right. Definitely.
It's not just...
You've been consistent.
And I said, in another podcast, I think months ago, or at least a month ago, I said, the bones of this team is like a first or second round exit. That's where your 3 elite players can take you. That's what this team's built on. You have the 3 elite players, and you just hope the supporting cast is good enough. And I think that's about what that strategy can get you to. Like, this is what, the 4th or 5th second round exit in this era? Like, you kind of have to look at the big picture sometimes here. Like, it's amazing this group won a cup, but this is a pattern. This happens a lot. Yes. And like you said, you can look at a lot of the reasons why they lost to Seattle as a lot of the reasons why they lost this series. And yes, Nichushkin is part of that too, but it's one person. It's not even the 3 elite players. It's just one. It's not even the goaltender.
Okay, but time out. Would you not consider him among the elite players?
I think
in the moment where we were.
Yes.
He was leading the NHL, you know what I mean, in goals.
Yeah, I think I said on the 2 shows ago he was their 4th best player.
Correct.
I totally not changing that. So yeah, he's very important, but teams lose somebody all the time, and you can't just say, "Oh, Zach Parise's in the top 6 now. Like, that's our solution." Like, no, you have to have a better team than that.
For sure.
Agreed.
Even though, yes, it's very unfortunate. They were headed down that road anyway.
Totally. Yep. And that's why I say, because we knew Landeskog, we kept crying and trying, praying to the Lord above that Landeskog was going to have a stroke of luck and we were going to see him. But that's a part of the problem too. Like that, because those 2 dudes are those same type of player. And not only like on the ice, but kind of off the ice in terms of how their actions speak louder than words sometimes. And I think Landeskog can kind of back it up with words, which is obviously he's a captain, so he's got his own tinge of value. But it just felt like the Avs were like also hoping that Landeskog would come back, and that's so crazy to me because you didn't address anything then.
I think they knew he wasn't.
That's what I mean is they had to have known more, and so they knew he wasn't, and so they still didn't really do anything about it, knowing full well that all it took was one hot drug test, and you didn't have that role anymore.
But what
And they
can they
didn't
really
do-
do? I mean, they traded about as much as they could have traded. Like, how do they
Yeah.
even get a significant piece onto this team at this point in both
Yeah.
assets and money? Like, they kind of made their bed at this point. Like,
And now guess what? This year it's worse. This year that same problem is twice as bad, basically, because Nichushkin's, although his contract won't hit the books, if you have a plan of bringing him back, which you pretty much have to, because no one's going to trade you for him at the value he is, no one's going to take that contract, and you're not buying it out. So the plan for Nichushkin is he's coming back to play for the Colorado Avalanche for 6.2 or whatever it is.
We don't know
I don't know that, but I mean, I gotta assume. Are you
that's what I think.
Are
I
you
mean,
comfortable with the other options at all?
I think it makes sense, but I also feel like if the locker room is like, hey, we don't want to give him another shot here, then you take whatever you can get for him and trade him away.
Okay.
Like,
But you
you're not gonna
can't.
get-
He has 6 years. Like, nobody in the league.
somebody
is
will
taking
take
6
him for
years.
something.
6 years.
I mean, it might not. It's going to be not much, but somebody will take.
Are
him
the
for something.
Avs retaining? Are they going to retain half?
I was going to say I could see that happening if the Avs retain like 50%, because then that
But
means
then-
that you're paying.
And the problem's
I don't
real
think so.
again.
Mhm.
I
Then
mean,
the problem's real. Then you got 10 million on the books.
this
that you
is a
can't
guy
spend.
who led the league in goals in the playoffs through 2 rounds. Like, this is a guy somebody will like. If they're
And
like,
then-
look, we want him off the roster. Chicago, you want to give us a 4th round pick for him? They'll probably be like, nah, but how about a 5th? You know, they're not going to say retain 50% of his salary. They're going to say, I'll give you less than what you want, and that's going to be fun. Like, I'm not suggesting that that's what the Avs should do. I'm just saying, like, if that is the path they want to go down, somebody will take him.
Like a cap dump, essentially, a risk dump.
But it's hard
Yeah.
to dump 6 years. Like, even
It's 6 years, but it's a great player. Somebody will take a chance.
well, then the Avs need to just play him because
That's
they're
my point,
worse
yeah.
without him.
I think so too. But at the same time, if the locker room says we don't want him here, they'll get some small pittance for him, and that'll be the better
Then
choice.
they're just making. I mean, I guess if they want to be on some high ground and they don't want to look at him again, but your team's going to be worse. You can't replace him, and you're in an even bigger financial hole. I know it's not as simple as that, but you know, when people say it's a business, like we shouldn't feel sorry for him, it's like it works the other way. It's a business, and you just have to suck it up. Like everyone's there to win, and yes, he disappointed at the worst possible time, and you know, I'm not going to say that that's nothing, but it's just in everyone's best interest to make it work. I mean, it'd be if someone like Chicago or whatever does take him on and makes them a lot better, but I just think he absolutely 100% would get a job if he was like bought out or terminated. Easy, but 6-year term with $30 million left, like, you know, a team's that's a lot of money that you have to sell that to ownership. I just don't think somebody would take that kind of term.
And the thing that we're overlooking here too, because I'm looking on Cap Friendly right now, he still has a no move clause in his contract through 2024-25, and then starting in 25-26, it's a modified no trade clause. So then at that point, you're stuck to 12 teams that you can't,
probably competitors.
The player submits a 12-team no trade list. So sorry. So then you have 20 teams that then he could go to, but I mean that's another year down the line, right? So I think no matter what, I think you're stuck with him at least for another year, unless ownership decides to buy him out. But I just don't see that happening.
12 years. That's insane.
I don't want that.
Yeah, unless the players are really
the buyout is a non-option for sure. You can only trade him or keep him, and
I mean,
if you trade him, you're reserved to the fact that they'll always have a bargaining chip on you, and you're going to lose the trade probably. Because Val Nichushkin is a great player, and you're going to have a hard time getting anyone to say, yeah, but I'll take that. I'll take on the risk that he's not going to be available in the playoffs for that price, and that's just not going to happen. So I'm with you, Ezra. Like, I don't know, but my gut tells me they'll understand that that's probably the best option to just try and truly rehabilitate this hockey player and find a way to make him a part of the team of the future and trusted by the rest of the room. Because I do think that you're right in keying on that being a pretty crucial factor. Because we talked about last week with, Jack Johnson even saying those are the decisions he's made, and that's like that says a lot. Like there's definitely a rift in that room, I imagine. Cause we saw it on the ice in Game 4. It was clear and obvious. So that's something that the Avalanche will have to weigh. And as they look ahead and we look ahead and turn the page and kind of take a glance over at who's on the table to be signed or re-signed, I guess I should put it, and kind of what the money looks like for the Colorado Avalanche. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We have 140 live viewers and listeners right now, so thank you folks very much. We appreciate your time and attention. Please head on over to milehighhockey.com if you enjoy this content. We also got articles and all kinds of fun stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, we're dropping a roundtable pretty soon here where Jackie kind of spearheads a few questions and the four of us kind of give our feedback, and you get to see kind of our thoughts on the season as a whole. But as I teased a little bit, let's take a little look ahead at what this is crazy. We're those people who are already talking about next season's Colorado Avalanche team. But I think this conversation we're having now segues like nicely into it, because the Nichushkin situation will kind of potentially dictate how the Avalanche handle some of their RFAs and UFAs in the offseason. So I put out a question to all of you to rank your top 5 re-signees in terms of priorities. And Ezra, you had 5, so I'll let you take the floor first. Give us your rankings.
Sure. Yeah, I said I did put 5 because you asked for 5, but I don't want them all back. But Casey Middlestat, I think, is number 1, and there's no question they're going to try to re-sign him and succeed at it because he's an RFA. We don't know exactly if it's going to be short or long because we don't know what they're going to want to do with him. For me, it's long and as cheap as possible, but I'd be, I don't think he's going to come in over $5 million, but we'll see. And then the next option is Jonathan Drouin. I think you have to try to re-sign him with Val Nichushkin's money and worry about squaring it all up later. Don't use all of Nichushkin's money on him. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's worth that. But another podcast mentioned that an Evan Rodriguez contract would be a pretty good comparable for him. He got 4 years and $3 million, I think, from Florida. I could see something like that, maybe even a little shorter and a little more money. But yeah, I think he definitely should be the priority to bring back. And I'd be comfortable with the list stopping there and just kind of reforming the bottom 6 out of whatever's available in free agency and hopefully the development of Nikolai Kovalenko and John-Luc Foudy, but that's obviously we don't know what's going to happen with prospects ever, so it's hard to say that. But if they were to try to re-sign anybody from the current bottom 6, the options are Jakob Trenin, Brandon Duhaime, Joel Kiviranta, and then Cogliano and Parise. Parise we know is retiring. Cogliano we hope is retiring, or I should say I hope is retiring. And I would say of those guys, the best option is definitely Trenin. They don't have anybody else who can win faceoffs on this roster. And it is something that matters, especially we saw the penalty kill without Trenin just could never get off on the right foot. So it struggled. And I think he is going to be the most expensive of those options, but also the most worth the money. After him, if they don't get him, Duhaime or Kiviranta. Duhaime's probably a little bit better. Kiwi had some great moments this playoff run, but he's not good. So, that's where I land.
I'm muted. I think I agree with that expert analysis there, Ezra, with he's not good. So, but I posed the top 5 because I think the reality of the situation will be that I hope this isn't true, but that one of the top 2 on everyone's list won't be back because of the situation and because I think the Avs will bet on the side of being conservative rather than filling that cap, using that cash as you mentioned it, and worrying about it later. I think they'll probably worry about it now and try and get ahead of it, which kind of is unfortunate timing because I think the guy who won't get the contract we all want him to is Jonathan Drouin, because I think it's going to be a perfect storm where he's worth more than what the Avalanche are going to be willing to give him, and it's going to be a lot more than what the Avalanche want to give him. I think I've talked a lot about him potentially taking a pay cut, but you can't if you're him. You just can't simply do that now in this stage of his career. If he wants this to be the last and most lucrative contract of his career, he's going to have to do that. And I don't think we proved to be competitive enough for him to be. I don't feel like we're a Jonathan Drouin away from a Stanley Cup. And so he's not just buying in, I don't think, from the jump. I think there's other teams that could offer just as likely of a chance at the Stanley Cup as the Avalanche now, which might not have been true 2 or 3 years ago. But just in quick reaction to the other things you said, I like Trenin and Duhaime. I really do. I think that they have a fit in the bottom 6. And I like them just based on, knowing Cogliano is on the way out. I think one of those guys can slot into kind of where Cogs was playing in the lineup. But Jackie, we talked a little bit about the defense heading into things. Who on the back end, if anyone, are you bringing back with Sean Walker, Jack Johnson, and Caleb Jones potentially hitting the market?
Neither.
None of them.
No.
Okay.
Jones is 100% gone.
Okay.
I mean, if Jack Johnson wants to take minimum again, I definitely think there's a possibility he'd re-sign. I'd hope for a little bit better, but you're also going to pay for a little bit better. And Walker, I just don't think you can bring back.
Did shrink.
Yes, yeah, he did not have a good series against Dallas, and the fact that he was so underutilized in that double overtime game just says it all. And that's also why I don't think Duhaime's going to be back either. I mean, the guy played 8 minutes in a double overtime game. That's
scary.
That's kind of here's your
not
sign.
A vote of confidence. Yeah.
I didn't even realize that was that low. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And Walker, I think, was only at 23 minutes, which in a double overtime game was pretty stark contrast against the top 4 anyway. So before I thought, okay, try to trade Manson. Maybe you can get a decent asset for him. Maybe you can even get a first or second round pick for him and then re-sign Walker. I mean, I guess that's still a thought because at least you're getting something. But I just don't think you can give him 5x5 or whatever it is he wants. So I think he's now just not going to be worth it. And the Avs need more players that are playing better than their contract. And I would agree that Duran was the only one that you could say this year was better than what his contract was. So
it wasn't hard, but yes.
Yeah, right. But he was definitely a lot better. So
yeah.
So as far as the others, I actually think there is a decent chance Duran will come back. He even brought it up in their last little second of interviewing after they were eliminated. He even brought it up. It wasn't asked. So that always to me says the context and stuff like that is so important because sometimes these guys are giving complete leading questions and then everyone runs the quote on Twitter and it's oh my God, if you saw what the question was, this answer is worthless. But no, he offered it up himself that he wants to come back. He loves it here. His family loves it here. I just think he's not a guy that's on the rise. He already had that 5-year contract. He already had the expectations in those tough years in Montreal. And he definitely has earned himself more. But I don't think anybody's really going to line up and give him a big deal because reputation is so important in the NHL. And does anybody want to give him $30 million to find out riding shotgun on an MVP season was a big reason for it.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so many reasons. I think McKinnon needs him. McKinnon needs a friend like that to ground him. And I don't think he's had since like Barry and Eric Johnson and Landy's not around as much. Like, I don't think he's had like a buddy. And
That's a great
so
point.
I just
That's a
think it's
good
going to be
point.
so important to McKinnon, and he's going to broker the deal. He's
I
going
think-
to kind of work on both sides and say, like,
Yeah.
we have to figure this out, guys.
That's an interesting comment because I think Kale comes close, but I think because Kale shares so much in common with Nate in terms of like the superstar treatment stuff that he gets from major media and all that, that it's like there's not as much of a grounding element as you put it. Like Gabe is like very well known for being Mr. Humble Pie. And I imagine like that's a important presence for someone like Nate, who, although he outwardly always says, don't get too high, don't get too low. Like we see you, Nate. Like we see you and how you do get real high and you do get real low. And your actions speak louder than your words in that sense. And I do think that the Avs missed that grounding presence this year to kind of look around the room and say, you know, it wasn't enough for Gabe to be given fist bumps on the way out of a victory. It is, you know, you need this dude as a part of the fabric of the team in its truest sense of the word. So that's interesting, Jackie. I hadn't really thought of it that way.
I mean, I don't mean that like they're not close and they're not, especially the ones that won the cup together. They have a bond, but as far as like a personal friend of Nate's, and totally. I feel like, you know, he was close to O'Reilly and Barry and Eric Johnson and Landeskog. I don't know that there's anybody else on the team other than Duran that he's, I guess Cogliano is somebody that he's bonded with, but I just think it's going to be so important. Like, how do we not know that McKinnon took that step because he had that kind of like great comfortability, point. Somebody he could just hang out with on the road. They drive to games together. Like Duran has even said, you know, I try to keep him calm on the bench, stuff like that. Like, I just think there's so many layers to this. It's just so much more than a guy they took a chance on, had a good year, and now he deserves more money. I just think
that's awesome.
Duran is comfortable too. Like he says he loves it. There's just so many reasons for it to work out. And then also the insiders have already started saying, well, Duran probably will be back. I think Friedman said it, and I think the fourth period said it. So it's not just us winking.
Nice.
That's so I think it'll happen. I think they know that they have to find a middle ground. Maybe they'll have to give him a little bit of term, like 3 or 4 years, but I think it'll be worth it.
This is me coping, you know, in the event that they don't. I just got to...
I know, look, I'm optimistic about something. It is possible. It is possible.
It is possible. Well, Ezra, you mentioned somewhere in that $4 million range, right? Am I repeating that correctly?
I said 4 years, $3 million, but I think he probably comes in at like more like 3 years, $4 million. But
I think it could be like 2.5 to 3 million.
Okay.
I think it could be
I think that sounds great. I just I wonder.
My thing is, it's
we have to remember his agent.
Yeah.
is,
well, he got a 4th year in his ELC, so there's token to the agent at 3.1 on an ELC, which I get it. Whatever. He's a number 2 draft overall.
Was it because there has to be a reason for that? You can't add years to ELCs.
He had. It might.
I'm trying to think it had. Yeah, that's just when you play in juniors or minors.
Okay.
When you're under 20. Okay,
so I'm not sure how it works, but they do have him under the books on 2013 and 14 for Tampa at 3.225 AAV with a 925 cap hit. So I don't know. That's interesting, but I will say
those are the performance bonuses. Like
yes, they are 2.3 million in the last 3 years in performance bonus. Okay, that makes more sense. But he also got 5.5 million and 6 from Montreal, and then obviously we know the 825. So I feel like if we can get him for less than 3, I'll be amazed, to be quite honest with you, based on who his agent is. Like, it's going to be hard to not just.
But the agent works for him. I mean, if he says that's what he wants, you know, the Avs are going to have to pay him more. 825 is not happening again, absolutely. But it's just they're just going to have to make it work, really. And McKinnon is going to. He's not going to be quiet during it either.
That's a good point. They might want to keep him out of the room if they can. But Evan, tell me, or no, or don't keep him in the room if I get what I want. McKinnon's in the room, but Evan, how confident are you now? God, I hate this question so much. How confident are you about Landeskog's return next season?
Oh man, the age-old question, huh? It's like we've been going over this for like 2 years now. But in those 2 years, I am the most confident that I have been in a while. In his plausible return.
Yeah.
We've seen how well he was moving, to kind of end the season. We ultimately learned that he was nowhere near coming back in the playoffs if he has made a deeper run, which I think is fine because then it allows him to go a little bit more at his own pace and kind of go about his recovery, a little bit better. He doesn't have to rush it, right? So I think that if he's able to at least like stay on the ice throughout the summer and like being down at Family Sports Center and all these sorts of things, that he's as long as he's there consistently and like continuously improving, then I wouldn't see why at least he wouldn't give it a shot, right? I mean, we've talked about this entire healing process that he's been through post surgery of like 12 to 16 months, and like nobody's ever done this before, and all these sorts of things. September will be 16 months. That's when training camp is. So it's going to be interesting to see like day one of camp if he comes out there at all. I think that will be a really big sign of like, is he out there day one taking line rushes and like going at it at training camp, or is he going to be on the other rink still doing something else? Because then that'll show that he's still at least some time away and not entering the lineup anytime soon.
Well,
I bet he'll be there, but in non-contact, so it'll be like, I definitely think he will try. He will try. For me, it's like, how long does it last?
Yeah.
But I can't see him hanging him up without truly getting on the ice, and unless he's just so far away that you can't even see the finish line. But I think it's even like 80 or 90%. Like he owes it to himself to get in a game and see what happens.
Agreed.
And I think he will.
Yeah. I think I'll pose this question out to you guys. If Landeskog is in a regular jersey at training camp, actually take that back. If he's in a non-contact jersey to start training camp, but then like maybe a day or two afterwards he's in a regular jersey, does he play a preseason game? Like, I feel like if there's
I think he has to, because it's been so long.
And that would be when you would really test that out, right? Like I couldn't see him like not playing a single preseason game but feeling ready to go, then just him being thrown out for game one. I don't see that happening. But I also wouldn't be surprised by it. And I know too that we have talked about him going up to like Loveland and getting stints up there.
Oh man, can you imagine?
Which would be amazing, but it's also the AHL, so you have to be wary of that. Like I said in an earlier episode, just keep Keaton Middleton away from him if he does go up there.
But I think you're right.
It's going to be September. We'll see.
He's got to play at least some point in preseason, like at least the second week, if he doesn't play on those early ones. But I'd say probably at least two, because there's just got to be a game where he's like, I'm in a game now. What can I do?
Yeah, you got to soak up all of the possibilities of rehab for him. And like a preseason game with things notched down a little bit comparatively to the regular season, that's like prime pickings for him getting comfortable mentally too with the speed of the game and stuff like that. So I'm with you. And Evan, I was going to pitch this to you after the show, but I mean, we only got 10 minutes left and life is life. So why don't I just do it live in front of everybody? But if Landeskog does start his journey at camp as a part of the team, whether it be in a non-contact jersey and all that stuff, I know you go to a lot of the camp practices typically. So I think we should do a Landeskog watch where we treat him like he's like a pregnant panda in a zoo, and we just follow him the entire time And we give you day one of the Landeskog watch, and we just kind of fill people in on how things are going in that form. So I don't know. Think about it as we finish the rest of the episode, and
I think
you get
every
back to
outlet's
me.
going to do
I-
that.
everyone is going to do that already,
Yeah.
regardless. So,
Yeah.
I don't worry. I would certainly plan to if it all works out to be there at camp. So, I mean, Brennan Vogt, our good friend, has definitely been on top of it. Whenever he's there, and I'm sure he, along with all of the other credentialed outlets, would definitely be keeping a close eye on him come September. And I'm sure, like, we will. It's not like he's not going to be on the ice from now until
Yeah.
September. There's no way. Like, he is going to be on the ice skating in June, July, August. I have to imagine.
But I think we can guarantee that we'd be the only outlet doing it in the style of a panda pregnancy video.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and then you'd have to get like the Cronkite mustache thing going too, and then we'd be really rolling. You know what I'm saying? Like live remote from practice, and it's like, look at Gabe today, and we just don't even say anything. We just talk real quiet, like it's a golf broadcast. I have ideas. That's all I'm saying.
Here we have a wild Gabriel Landeskog. Yes, skating
Give it
freely
up.
in the wild.
Oh, and look at him.
We see the
He's
wild
taking a puck
Landeskog
off the knee.
lacing
man,
up his skates.
See, we got all the elite talent in this room that we would need to do this sort
3
of
Attenboroughs? I
This-
mean, yeah.
This is what happens when it's off season. We go crazy when there's
Yeah.
no Cavs hockey to be played. You can't tell.
This feels like one of my comedy podcasts all of a sudden.
Yeah, let's go. Well, with that being said, let's transition into what is the last bold predictions of the 2023-24 season for the Colorado Avalanche. I will rehash kind of what we chose last week. Jackie, you said that the Avs would score a power play goal, and more particularly, it would be Mikko Rantanen. And I hate to be that guy, but ding, there it is.
That's
You earned
true.
that one.
That's true.
And you know what? You know what else you did? You said Gorgiev would start every single game in the playoffs, despite how he performed early on in the playoffs, and you were right about that as well. So we got to hand it to you, Jackie. You were we should have just been looking to you like, all right, Jackie, what's happening next? Because you've been on fire all season, so much so that your bracket looks great right now. Evan, you said that we would get 2 goals from McKinnon in Game 5. We got a goal and an assist. So because it's the last one of the year, come on, man, you get that ding. It was a 2.9. It wasn't a 2-goal night. I thought it was the morning after, mistakenly.
You're welcome for correcting that.
Yes, thank you for that. You always save me in many ways. Ezra, you said that there would be a lineup surprise in the form of potentially a healthy scratch. We might see Malinsky or Kovalenko. That didn't happen, but I'm going to buzz you, but I'm going to give you like a half credit because although it wasn't necessarily a surprise, Devon Toews did come back that day. Which was a benefit compared to Game 4. You saw that happen quickly. Yeah, Caleb Jones was in the box 2 times in his short experience in the playoffs, so I was happy to see him. And then I predicted that there would be another playoff edition on our next edition of the Mile High Hockey Lab, and that's the most painful X of all time. We didn't even touch on this, but how brutal was it that Matt Duchene was the guy who scored?
Oh my
It's
god!
pretty
Don't
funny.
even. Don't even. I mean, it was midnight. I had a graduation to go to the next day. I just wanted to go to bed and happy. And then it just had to be Matt Duchene. I was more angry than anything. I was just like, it had to be Matt effing Duchene.
And he did this terrible celebration after. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, it was on par for the course, though. I could feel Patrick Waugh going, it's only the second round. But, I that one hurt. You could see it coming, too. Like, he to his credit,
he was very good in that game.
Yeah, one of the only stars with legs the entire game. Yeah, totally. So let's do this. Let's roll that track for bold predictions, and let's do one last one before we turn the page on this season.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
All right, so I want to set this one up a little bit because it's harder when there aren't going to be games. So what I'm going to do this time for bold predictions is, since we kind of talked a little bit about the rest of the league and how it sorts out, I want to get bold predictions in the form of Stanley Cup winner and Conn Smythe winner from each of you. All right. Who wants to go first?
I got it because I've been my pick is still going. I did not pick the Avs, so yeah. I mean they just look unstoppable at the moment. Even though they got a little scare against Carolina, I think the Rangers are going to win. That's who I really want to win. If I just don't want out east or no one out west, please. Just that's an ugly Western Conference final. It's for the second year in a row. So anyway, Rangers, and I'll say Conn Smythe. Feels like an easy answer. Just give me Panarin.
I like it. Well, if he does that, I'm trying to look up the stats right now before I go putting my foot in my mouth. But it'd be nice to see Panarin do that. I mean, he's widely revered now as one of the best signings in recent history, with the Rangers cashing in on his free agency. So I like that pick. I like the Rangers pick as well. Jackie, what do you got for me?
Well, my pick's Florida, so I guess I'll stick with them. I have not looked at their stats, so I don't know who's leading in scoring. But the player that I like the best is Sam Reinhart. So
Nice.
So they win. I'll just pick him. I don't know if he quite, because it takes media hype to win the Conn Smythe. You got to think about that too. I don't know if he's quite going to be at the forefront for them, but why not? I'll pick him.
All right. I like it. He's got 9 points in 11 games, so he's not scoring. That's for sure. He's got 5 goals and 4 assists. Ahead of him is on his own squad is Verhaeghe with 11, Barkov with 13, and Matthew Tkachuk with 14.
I could see Tkachuk winning because he's got the media favor. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't want to pick him. So if I'm right and Florida wins, that's good enough. But I'll pick Sam Reinhart.
Perfect. I like it. Ezra, what do you think?
Well, my cup pick is also still alive and is also the New York Rangers. So I'll stick with them. I think I have them beating the Oilers in my bracket, so we'll see if that happens. But I think Conn Smythe for the Rangers is going to be Chris Kreider.
I realized after I said Panarin that I should have gone with Kreider, and I was going to see if you wanted Panarin instead, but I chickened out.
And I kind of wanted to pick Vincent Trocheck, who's leading them in points right now, and it's been incredible. But I just think Kreider, he's going to be if they make the final, he's going to show up. He always does.
All right, we got a bold prediction from the comments section. We got bold prediction: Druin re-signs for 4 years at $4.5 million. We're writing that down, Peter Man. We're writing that down, and we'll double back to it. That would be pricey.
Would we all be happy with that deal? I would be upset.
I'd be kind of unpleased.
I wouldn't be upset, but I also wouldn't be very happy.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the worst thing they do this summer, but I don't know. I'd be okay with it just because I'd like to see him back, even though that would be a little much.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
It's going to be closer to 3-ish, personally.
It would mean they would probably have to trade somebody else in the event that they think Nuke and Landy's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, that's if they know Landy's not back, then go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Exactly.
Anything over 4 is scary to me.
Scary. I agree. Well, since the playoffs went from being pretty enjoyable to pretty brutal quite quickly, I'm just going to keep on that theme. And this is going to be the year, finally, much to the chagrin of us in the western part of southern part of North America.
We'll do it.
And the Edmonton Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup. And Connor
McDavid. Why throw away your bold prediction like that?
I'd honestly rather see Dallas win.
And Connor McDavid is going to be the Conn Smythe winner.
Here,
okay.
I'm going to throw out an extra bold prediction because Dallas is going to absolutely smoke Edmonton in 5 games.
I hope.
They are going to smoke them. Whoever was coming out of Vancouver, Edmonton, they were going to smoke them.
If Dallas actually wins the Cup, do you think they'd have the guts to give it to Johnston, the Conn Smythe? And obviously it depends what happens in the next 2 rounds, but Would they have the guts to do it, to give it to someone that young?
Absolutely,
I
they
think
would.
their only chance of winning the cup is if Wyatt Johnston really goes off.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, if it's Dallas, it's going to be Matt Duchene.
That
So-
would be
Adrian,
something.
knock it off.
Can you tell my mental health is not all that well right now?
I mean,
No,
I think it'd be better than Jamie Benn, right?
God, I hate that
Yeah.
guy.
Oh,
He's the
man.
only reason I can't root for Dallas. Like, Dallas has a bunch of guys who went to Wisconsin, a guy who used to be one time he coached my summer hockey camp in Ryan Suter. I should be cheering for Dallas now, but I can't because I hate Jamie Benn.
I did also just realize I am wearing green, even though it's CSU green. I'm going to take it off because of all
How
this
dare you.
Dallas talk. I don't
How
like
dare
it.
you.
And then reveal my Nuggets shirt, which also it's been a bad weekend in Denver
Yeah.
sports altogether. Oh yeah.
Jeez, see this. So it's not. I'm not being that ridiculous, but I'm with you, Ezra, on getting the green, or Evan on getting the green out of the room. My wife was calling me crazy because I had a green cup that I was drinking water out of during Game 6, and there was a green burp rag, and I picked them both up and put them in the other room and said these are not allowed in the room while we're watching this game. And she was like, "Yeah,
Should I
because
get rid
that's
of my
what's."
allergy medicine?
Yeah.
My Gatorade bottle. Do I need to get rid of that too?
You three are the best. I want to thank the three of you so much for this was probably our most engaged year, both on our end and in terms of our listeners and the people who come and watch us live. So thank you to the three of you for your contributions and for showing up and being excited to talk Avalanche hockey, even though on a day like today it's slightly tinged with not so good times. I really appreciate you guys, and I've had a lot of fun with you all. So thank you.
Yeah, and I if I could, I just want to say thank you, of course, to everybody listening. And unfortunately, we do have to go into our off-season content now, which is always not as fun and not as good for us and our side and whatnot. But on both this side and the reading side, of course, really appreciate everybody helping keep this site alive and the podcast running and all that sort of stuff. Our future is not going anywhere. Don't you worry.
Nope.
We're still going to be here, even if it's going to be a slow summer. We're going to try and change a little bit of things around, make it a little bit better, a little more pristine. But outside of that, we're going to keep chugging along and keep on going. And that'll include this podcast, of course. Maybe get some new faces in here. I know we talked about bringing on more guests coming up here over the next year. So we'll see. Just keep an eye out. And of course, there is still hockey to be watched, even if it is not involving the Avs. So as I've been telling everybody, literally just go Eastern Conference. No one out West, please.
Eastern Conference.
I don't want to deal with another Western team winning it, especially when my choices are Dallas or Edmonton. So
yeah.
Anywho, but that's a long-winded way to say thank you to everybody, and of course the three of you as well for continuing to help on the podcast side and the writing side, of course.
Of course. And then we did this a few episodes ago. I think we did it on our deadline episode, and I really like doing this. Tell me what else you have going now the hockey season is over. Where else can we find you? What else do you work on?
Well, luckily for my NASCAR people, I'll be able to work for them a whole lot more. So I'll be over there a lot.
Yes.
Downforce. And I guess for all the local people here in Denver, I'm a tour guide at Ball Arena. So if you want to come get a behind the scenes thing, look at things with me now that there's no sports happening, there's a little bit more availability. So come on down. If you do want to see the ins and outs of the arena that the Nuggets and the Avs call home.
Nice.
Do you get to go in the locker rooms? Or is that forbidden?
I'm going to hold back that answer so I don't spoil it too early.
Yeah.
You have to come find out.
That's
Very
good.
nice.
No.
And you
Maybe it isn't. I don't know.
You definitely tell Gabe Landeskog when he can and can't go into the team store is what I hear, but that's just no. But Ezra, how about you? What you got going on?
Yeah, well, when I'm not talking about sports, I'm probably talking about comedy. Doing comedy. I've got a show called The Daily Misinformer that's at Daily Misinformer on all the things. If you want to hear how much of a liberal shill I can be, I get called a lot of names. It's very fun. I think the jokes are good. And I do improv in Los Angeles every 2 weeks at the UCB Theater on Herald Night on Monday. So if you're in the LA area for some reason and listen to this podcast, come through. And my sketch group is Public Breakup at Public Breakup Comedy on all the things. And our next big thing is we're going to be in Chicago at IO Fest at the end of July. So if you're in Chicago,
that's cool.
Follow us for that.
That's cool. I'm very jealous of that ability of yours, the improv one. I'm more like Michael Scott in the world of improv, where I have like one bit. So I just
they say every comedian wants to be a musician and every musician wants to be a comedian.
Hey, there it is. There you go. That's a good segue. Yeah, I got some music out there, folks. A band called Just a Feeling. If you want to head on over to all the stuff where you can listen to music, you can find our stuff out there. We do like pop punk, a little bit of alternative rock, stuff like that. And just gonna keep rocking and rolling with this podcast. I think we're gonna do some stuff here and there through the podcast just to keep you guys locked in. So you can't get rid of me that easy. You're gonna have to listen to this silly man talk about hockey still, even though the season's over. So that's really cool.
Me?
No, I'm just about to get to you, Jackie. I'm saving it's actually funny that you put that, because the reason why I did it this way is because I think you've earned the floor this season with what I would call the most calculated analysis of this crew. Because although you agreed with Ezra when we said they were going to sweep Dallas, for a while you'd been saying that you kind of felt like the Avs had given up their competitive advantage. So here are your roses, and here is the floor for you. What do you got going on? And thank you, Jackie.
Well, I'd say for me, my busy time's coming up. The two things, the draft and also off-season contract stuff. Those are two big things for me. So I would say that we're going to have a good amount of content on these things coming up. I am going to the draft. We'll see how behind the scenes I get. Nice. But I will be there. I will be present. So you should look forward to either a little bit or a lot of content from that. We'll see. Then, so yeah, I'm ready to get rocking and rolling with that stuff. And like I said, with the contracts, off-season stuff, we had a little signing today, Trent Miner. So shout out that, if you all hadn't heard that yet. And, so yeah, like I said, my June and July is pretty busy. So
you're just warming up now.
Yeah, exactly. So there's still lots of content to be had. So definitely stick with Mile High Hockey and we'll put it out there.
Jackie's that NBA player that, like, after his team gets eliminated from the playoffs, you see him out on the court still taking 3-pointers, preparing for next year. And we love you for it, Jackie. Thank you folks so much for tuning in. Just as we're about to sign off, we got our 200th live viewer. So thank you folks for watching. As I mentioned earlier, man, it's been such a cool year to see this audience grow for us. So we owe you all a huge debt of gratitude for keeping us going and doing this and giving us kind of a little bit of a reward for our time and effort. So thank you folks very much. Signing off for the last time of the 2023-24 season. We turn the page to look ahead to next year in our very next episode. I'm Adrian Hernandez with Jackie, Ezra, and Evan. This is the Mile High Hockey Lab. Go Avalanche.
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.